As he stepped out of the restroom, Jake spotted his classmate Daniel struggling to enter. Daniel, who had only one leg, attempted to stand up from his wheelchair to push the door open. Instead of helping, Jake smirked, walked over, and kicked the wheelchair away. Daniel stumbled, barely catching himself against the doorframe. Tears welled up in his eyes as he looked around for help, but Jake simply laughed and ran off. His cruel laughter echoed in the empty hallway as he made his way to the parking lot. His father, who had been waiting in the car, had witnessed the entire incident. As Jake climbed into the passenger seat, his father's voice was firm. "Who? Was that kid?" Jake rolled his eyes. "Oh, him? He's just my classmate. We call him the one-legged douchebag." His father said nothing. Without another word, he started the car and drove home in silence. The next morning, as Jake grabbed his backpack, his father entered the room and placed a sheet of paper and a pen on the desk. "You're going to write an apology letter to that kid." "What? No way!" Jake scoffed. "Everyone jokes around at school. Why should I be the one to apologize?" His father's voice rose, his patience wearing thin. "Then go rent your own house and live there." Stunned into silence, Jake hesitated before slumping into his chair. He begrudgingly picked up the pen and began to write, frustration burning in his chest. An hour later, his father drove him to school. Instead of heading to class as usual, they walked straight to the principal's office, where Daniel was already waiting. The principal, a stern-looking woman with sharp eyes, glanced at Jake's father, who gave her a firm nod. She then gestured for the two boys to follow her to the classroom. As they entered, the room fell silent. The students, sensing something unusual, watched in anticipation. Jake's father stepped forward and addressed the class. "Bullying is a cruel thing, and today my son will learn that lesson." He turned to Jake and handed him the letter. "Read it aloud." Jake's stomach twisted into knots. His face burned with shame as he looked at Daniel, who stood quietly by the teacher's desk. Taking a deep breath, Jake unfolded the letter and began reading. His voice trembled. "Dear Daniel, I was cruel to you yesterday. I laughed at you instead of helping. I hurt you and made you feel small when you were just trying to do something we all take for granted. I am ashamed of what I did, and I am truly sorry." Snickers erupted from the back of the classroom. Jake's ears burned hotter, but his father turned sharply, scanning the class with piercing eyes, his voice cut through the air like a blade. "If any of you ever bully another kid, you'll stand up here and read your own apology in front of the entire school. Do you understand?" The room went silent. One by one, the students looked down at their desks, the weight of his words settling over them. Jake's gaze met Daniel's. For the first time, he saw something he hadn't noticed before. Not weakness, but quiet strength. Daniel wasn't asking for pity. He wasn't even looking at Jake with hatred. He just stood there, head held high, waiting. Jake swallowed hard. "I'm sorry," he said again, this time without the letter. Daniel nodded. "Thanks." Jake's father placed a hand on his shoulder as they left the classroom. "Being strong isn't about hurting others," he said as they walked down the hall. "It's about having the courage to admit when you're wrong." That day, Jake learned a lesson he would never forget. Drop a heart if we need more fathers like him.